I was studying abroad in Moscow, and we wanted to go see Lenin's tomb, but it was closed for inventory.
What?
Yeah.
What are we inventorying? One Lenin
One
in
Lenin.
his tomb.
Yeah.
The end.
Maybe someone absconded with him. Yeah, I was gonna say I've been in Lenin's tomb and there's like nothing there except him.
I've been to Moscow twice, and it was closed both times.
What?
Yeah.
Oh, that's wild.
One time it was a Soviet holiday. They closed it for, at least at the time, they closed it for Soviet holidays. The second time was inventory, which is just like, oh, the wax is not really keeping up over here. And that's how I interpreted it. I don't imagine that his like thumb fell off. Maybe that's what happened. Like
then it would be closed for repairs, not inventory.
Maybe they have to take inventory of his body parts.
Yeah. But how many body parts do you need to keep track of?
I don't
suit
know.
And some hands and a head.
Yeah, there's only so many appendages.
Right. Anyway, so that's what I thought of on the train this morning. It was like traffic on the T. I mean, yes, the Lenin's tomb does have inventory because it has there's a thing inside.
Mm-hmm. Is there a gift shop at Lenin's tomb?
No, it's just
Then I could see there being an need for doing inventory.
Maybe they should have a gift shop there.
well, there is the mall directly across the street,
There
but that
is.
is very much not a Leninist mall.
No.
that is a expensive spot.
We need to make sure we
boom.
have an adequate supply of Lenin dolls for the gift shop.
Right. Yeah, that would be a thing if it was more than just a tomb. If like they're like, also, would you close if you didn't have enough dolls?
No.
You just say sorry, we're sold out.
Right.
What world
Come back tomorrow.
do we live in where there'd be enough demand
Right.
that they'd run out?
Disturbing dumpster fire world.
Welcome to Spoiler Piece Theater, the podcast that does not give a shit about spoilers. We just want to talk about the movies. My name is Kris Jensen. I'm a contributing writer at SIVO Weekly, and I'm a member of the Boston Online Film Critics Association.
My name is Evan Crean. I am editor for The Independent, co-chair of the Boston Online Film Critics Association, and co-author of your 80s movie guide to better living.
And rejoining us this week is our friend Megan Kearns.
Hello.
Welcome back.
Hello. Thanks for having me back, guys.
Tell the fine people who you are.
My name is Megan Kearns. I'm a freelance writer, and I'm also a member of the Boston Online Film Critics Association.
All right. Bafka. It's almost like we record the show in Boston.
I know.
Yeah.
Imagine that.
On this week's episode, we got one main movie. We got a whole bunch of other movies. Then stay tuned with there. I'll tell you what they are. We're going to talk about The Kitchen. All three of us saw The Kitchen. The Kitchen.
Which is not some art house picture.
This ain't some art house picture. Kitchen, here's a little story. The first time I realized you could forget what a word meant, I was like 6 or 7, and I was just sitting there in the living room or something. It's a Saturday, and I'm going, kitchen. And I look at my mom and say, Mom, what's a kitchen? And she's like, what? So I say, like, I didn't think that during the whole movie, but whenever I say the word kitchen, it brings me back
To being 6 years old.
to being 6 years old and forgetting what it means. And Evan saw Midsommar.
Midsommar, yeah. As the director calls it.
And we will gather your thoughts on that. First, Megan has a couple movies, neither of which I've seen, and I'm curious about both. You got The Perfection and Them That Follow.
Yes. All right. So I'll start with the one that I liked less, which would be Them That Follow. Saw it at the Independent Film Fest in Boston earlier this year. And it's fine. It's fine. But I never really like to say, it's just fine about a film. I'd rather have much stronger thoughts and feelings. And the film intrigued me because it's about a young woman who is about to get married. She's in an extremely religious, conservative society, I believe in the Appalachian Mountains. And her father is a preacher, a Pentecostal preacher who does like snake charming or snake handling as part of this, as part of the sermons. And like it starts off with somebody getting bit and then like either dying or almost dying, or I think they do die. See, this is the thing. I don't even remember. But that kind of launches a whole thing where her father's gotten in trouble before with the law because, you know, somebody has died because of the snake practice in the sermon.
Who knew it was
movie?
risky?
It's not. I know it sounds funny talking about it, but it's not. It's incredibly serious.
Listen to
and
my
somber.
words. Look at this snake.
He's got a ventriloquist act with a snake. I would see that.
Yeah. No, it's a very somber, serious film. And Olivia Colman's in it. Olivia Colman is fantastic, as she always is fantastic in everything. And it's really about how this young woman is trying to be a good daughter and be religious because she is religious, but also she's trying to find herself and she's not sure if she should marry this person that she's going to marry because she doesn't really love him. She loves this other guy who is kind of veered off course from the religion, and he doesn't buy into the religion, but his parents are really religious still, and he wants to get away and he wants her to go away with him, and she's like, but I can't because she feels so devout. And it's all about kind of this crisis of conscience and crisis of faith with her, and she's coming into her own, you know, as a young woman, and her, you know, arguably her sexuality. And it's really, I want to say it is interesting because ideologically it's interesting, but in the execution it's just okay. But I don't know, I feel like maybe I should watch it again because as I'm talking about it, I'm like, this actually sounds really good. I'm like, this is a movie I want to see, but I did see this movie.
That happens to me all the time when I talk through a movie. It's like, geez, this sounds good the way I'm talking.
Right. And that's why I was so excited to see this film, because it sounded so great, and I was like, yes, I want to see this. And then I watched it and I was just like, it's okay. It's all right. So I will say this though, there is at the film's climax, there is a really amazing kind of body horror scene with a snake and someone, and it's fantastic. That I will say, that scene is fantastic. So it might be worth watching just for that.
All right.
Is it like a
I
snake?
know Kris is like, you're in.
Is it like a snake to the genitals or something?
It's not a snake to the genitals, but the snake is like biting the arm and like the throat, and yeah, there's like, and then that's what happens. And then as I'm remembering more as I'm talking about it, the guy who this happens to, his arm is getting like swollen and really infected. This isn't in the climax, this is earlier. And it's getting really swollen and infected, and then the father wants to chop the arm off so the infection doesn't spread, and yeah, it's great.
So there's some great snake special effects. That sounds cool.
Yeah, there's some great body horror, some snake special effects. Yes. Yes.
I heard snake body horror in the kinds of movies I was watching. I was like, does it crawl into their skin or something? You see it writhing around?
No,
okay.
I wish, but no.
It's
Yeah,
not that kind of
nothing
movie.
that cool. It's not that kind of movie.
I think I've been really getting wrong what kind of movie it is.
Yeah. I know.
It's like, this sounds hilarious.
It sounds
Does it go in his arm?
Right? That might have been a better film.
No, I understand. So like there's good ideas and there's
Great
good
ideas.
people.
Yeah. It's really well acted. Great.
Just never inflates. Right?
Yeah. And I will say, and it could also be my own personal bias, because I just wanted to like shake her and say, just leave your shitty family and leave this shitty community, and but it's interesting, her kind of trying to balance what she wants and her individuality with the community and what she feels her duty is. So yeah, so it's really interesting ideas. I just wish it had been executed a little bit better. But yeah, but the snakes are great.
All right, cool.
Give it 2 snakes.
I got
snakes up.
Yeah, as a snake parent,
Oh,
I have 2
yes.
snakes myself.
That's right.
Neither of them, if they bit you, would cause any damage, and they would only bite you if you startled them.
Yeah.
Or if like you covered your hand in chicken juice and put it right in front of their faces. Those are the only situations they bite you.
Well, I mean, that's fair.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
So that would be your snake saying, "Oh, sorry, I didn't see you there." If you startled him,
Yeah, right.
I bit you. I'm sorry, I didn't see you there.
Oh, yeah.
You startled me.
It's like, sorry, I didn't mean to bump into your coffee. Yeah. The perfection.
The perfection, yes. So the perfection, see, it's interesting. So that Them That Follow, I like more, I feel like, in theory than in execution, although it's a film I want to support and love because it's such a small indie film. But The Perfection is a film that, hearing about it, or I feel like if I was hearing about it, I'd be like, oh, okay. But watching it, I was totally on board, totally into, and I feel like this is a film people just need to watch. So I went in knowing absolutely nothing about the film, and I'm kind of glad I did because it twists, it turns, and I really liked that. But what I will say about it is it's basically about a cello prodigy who, as it was a cello child prodigy, and then had to stop because she had to take care of her mother, who was suffering from mental illness, and she had to take, or maybe not mental illness, I don't remember. Anyway, she had to take care of her mother, and so she couldn't play the cello anymore. But she's still revered for having been a child prodigy, even though she didn't continue her career. And then she goes back to the school and the director of the school that she used to play at, and she meets the new star of the school, who is also, phenomenal and fantastic, and they're about the same age. And Evan, I believe you described it, you've been reading that it's described as psychosexual.
Yes.
And yeah, I will say I was so excited because it starts off with this queer attraction and this kind of queer, like romance. And I'm like, ooh, I'm totally on board in this. And then it turns into body horror, like legit body horror. And I'm like, ooh, I'm even more on board with this. And then and like shit gets weird. Like there's some, like you hear that there's some kind of infection going around at this like party in, I think they're in Japan. And then the two women are on a bus and they're like traveling to another country, like in the back roads. And then the one of the women starts like getting sick, and then she just starts vomiting everywhere. And like, and things are happening with her eyes, and she thinks that bugs are crawling over her skin. And yeah, it's intense. But the movie just is really interesting and goes in a lot of different directions, and I think everybody should see it because it's a really fascinating film, and it's a really interesting look at art and what you will do to sacrifice for art. But also there's a queer love story, kind of, maybe not, and then there's also a condemnation of patriarchy happening and retaliation against gross powerful men who try to control young women. So yeah, so there's some interesting ideas there, and it's also really cool and gross.
And that's available on Netflix, right?
That is available on Netflix, yes.
Is it one of their originals, or is it just available on Netflix? Do you know?
I think it's one of their originals, yeah. I think because it played at, I think, Fantastic Fest last year, and then I think Netflix picked it up for distribution. So
cool.
Yeah, so it'll say like Netflix originals, but I don't know if they actually did like the production of it. I just know they did the distribution of it.
Sounds
Cool.
super
All right.
interesting.
Yeah, it's great. Like, it's really great.
I'll put it on my queue like now.
Yeah, watch it tonight. Yeah, because it's just, it's really good.
Good.
And it goes in like I thought I knew where it was going, and then I was like, oh, not quite. So yeah.
Yeah, Netflix isn't all just whatever it starts streaming automatically. There's some stuff there. Like,
Yes.
unfortunately, you have to dig too much sometimes, but there's stuff there. Cool. Okay. Evan, you saw what? Now, I'm thinking of it as the ultimate not an Evan movie. How do you feel about that?
How do I feel about this?
Is it an Evan movie?
It is, shockingly.
Yes.
Wow.
So you didn't think I was going to like Midsommar?
Well, there's a difference between not like and not being an Evan movie.
Yeah.
I don't want to box you in too much.
I guess that's true.
But there is a kind of movie that I love that you never like. So that's the frame of reference I was having here.
Yeah, well, this is one I liked. Where to even begin? So I was not sure whether I was going to be into Midsommar, but I really was. I locked into it pretty much immediately. I was just totally captivated by the cinematography, by the editing. It is very similar to Hereditary to me in that it has this palpable sense of tension that just goes throughout the entire movie. And some of it has to do with like events that are actually scary or tense, but a lot of it just has to do with this heightened emotional state that everybody in the movie is in from the moment the movie starts. And so that definitely pulled me through in ways that made me feel like 2.5 hours didn't feel that long. You know, I normally am averse to long movies, and I think this one was still a little long for my taste, but for the most part, I found myself engaged with the movie and not thinking about the length and thinking, oh, this is too long. Get me out of here.
Awesome.
It's, I dig the parts of it that are very, I don't know, it's similar to The Wicker Man from the folk horror perspective. I dig that it's similar to The Witch as well. I feel the end especially is very much like The Witch.
Yes.
The closing shot of Florence Pugh just grinning.
Yeah.
It felt very much like the end of The Witch. It was this
Absolutely.
wicked kind of acceptance and celebration of what has transpired throughout this entire movie.
Yeah. Some validation for her for what she's been going through.
Oh,
right?
yeah.
Vindication too. Yeah.
I think one of the things that I thought this was going to be gorier than it turned out to be, because I remembered your descriptions of some of the beats in the movie, so it was interesting actually seeing them play out and think to myself,
they're very spaced.
They're very spaced, and a lot of the violence doesn't actually happen on camera. A lot of the stuff you see is the gross, icky aftermath of it. When the people jump off the cliff and their faces get smashed, oh, you see that. You fucking see that. And that is horrifying and gross and just, oh my God, I can't believe that if anyone knew what was happening there, they let Florence Pugh's character sit through that after just losing her family. So that was gross. But some of the other stuff, like the lung thing that you were explaining to me, once I saw it, I was like, okay, this fits. I don't feel like it's as gross as, it's not Hannibal or Silence of the Lambs. It's not one of those kind of, it's icky and guys' lungs are exposed. It felt appropriate to what was going on in the scene. It wasn't just there for shock value.
Tasteful lung.
Yes.
Hanging.
Tasteful lung hanging and skin stretching. But yeah, I mean, and the friends too, when what's his name? Will Poulter just mysteriously disappears, and then that guy shows up wearing his face later.
Yeah.
He was very appropriately cast. I agree with you. For once, they actually cast Will Poulter in something that he was age appropriately cast too.
Yeah, he's been a paradox. He's so good, and he's either like a child or 10 years older than he should be in the movie.
Right. And so this time he felt age appropriate
Grad
for the
student,
shitty
right.
grad student. There's just so many creative and interesting shots in this movie, especially involving mirrors. When people are looking in a mirror, or they're in a mirror and you see the reflection and they're not even aware of his presence. Like when he's snuck into the church essentially and is flipping through the scripture, and you're just like, oh, there's someone fucking sneaking up behind him. Oh God. Oh no. Or, one of the early scenes where they're all sitting around the couch talking while Florence Pugh is in the entryway, and they're just kind of you seeing from her perspective. Oh man. I was blown away. It's tense. It's gorgeous. It's well edited. It made me feel like 2.5 hours. Didn't really feel like 2.5 hours. I was not expecting this to be an Evan movie.
See, I have to say, I'm surprised by that you didn't feel the length of time, because that was my biggest gripe about the film, is that I felt every single long, drawn out moment. Yes, that's interesting. That's great though that you didn't feel it was too long.
What were your thoughts on Midsommar? Oh, sorry, Evan.
I was gonna say it definitely could have been shorter. I just think for someone who normally is so long movie averse, it didn't bother me this time, which I was shocked about.
That's great though. I thought it was great. When I first saw it, I was kind of like much more lukewarm on it, and the more I've sat with it, the more I've thought about it, because I think I saw it like about a month ago or so. The more I've thought about it, the more I'm like, it was really brilliant. I love the choices. Visually, it is gorgeous and it's stunning. But for me, I thought the choice to make it so long and drawn out was an intentional choice, in that I felt very uncomfortable and I felt kind of annoyed and I felt kind of bored at times. Not really bored about what was going on screen, but just that it was so long and drawn out. For me, it felt like that. And then I thought, oh, it's about a horrendous trauma and tragedy, and it's about a horrible breakup and the dissolution of a relationship, and breakups feel long and feel drawn out, and it feels like it's never going to end, and it feels like you're going to feel shitty forever. And I was like, I think that might be why it was so long and why things were so spaced out, because you are supposed to feel what Florence Pugh is feeling, as far as like, what the hell's going on? When is this pain going to end? When is this going to stop? So for me, even though I was kind of like antsy while I was watching it, it worked when I thought about it, because I was like, oh, that's how I'm supposed to be feeling. So yeah, so it did ultimately work, and I thought it was great. I thought it was a really fascinating work, again, like Hereditary, on exploration of trauma and grief and guilt. And yeah, and this one also had a breakup, and what does that mean, and how do you navigate that? And yeah, I just thought it was great.
Yeah, awesome.
That's a really great analogy to look at it that way.
Oh,
and
thank
like
you.
the idea of a relationship dissolving, because yeah, you're right, it totally happens over the course of the movie, and you see even the stages of it when they're sitting there about to eat the pie, and the other couple, the guy had supposedly disappeared / gone to the train station without her, and she looks at Jack Rayner and she's like, oh, you would have totally done that. And that's,
oh shit, I gotta see it again. I didn't catch that.
Yeah, she says it kind of almost under her breath, but also to him, you would have done something like that to me. And you just sit there in the awkwardness of that moment of her saying to him, yeah, I'm realizing that you're a shit guy and I shouldn't be cutting you these breaks, because although you've been there for me over the course of this time, you haven't really been there.
It's a hollow, resentful being there.
You're a gaslighty shit guy.
And he was such a shit through the whole thing. Yeah.
It's like, what? I'm here, aren't I? It's that kind of attitude where it's like
you should be grateful. Yeah.
Oh my God. I wanted to punch him so hard in that scene early in the movie where he starts that fight with her, where she's like, dude, we were just at a party and you just said out of the blue you're going to go to Sweden. You didn't talk to me at all about it. And it just came up in this awkward circle, and he gets defensive, and it's just, oh, I told you about this. I told you I was thinking about going. I just want to punch him so hard.
Yeah, he's a douche.
The sex part, I have to say. So I went to see this with my coworker. He wanted to go see it, and I've been wanting to go see it. And it was just funny because there weren't that many of us in the theater. The movie's been out for a little while now. There were maybe 4 other people in the theater. And when we get to the sex scene, and there's all the naked chanting women, and then the one woman bends down and like touching pushes. That too. But she touches the girl's face and then touches his face and is singing to him. The look of horror on his face was so fucking funny that all of us in the theater burst out laughing because it was just so hilarious.
On Jack Rayner's face?
Yeah. We were all just laughing so hard at how awkward it was.
Because it is.
It's super awkward.
It's so weird.
Yeah, he's like, what is going on? Like, I'm here having sex, and these people are like weirdly cheering me on. Like, I don't even know what to do with this.
He should have known.
The whole community experiences everything collectively.
Yes.
Somebody feels pain, they yell with them. Somebody's laughing, they laugh with them. And
that was cool.
Just makes sense. That it's like, we're here to facilitate this thing, help it along. And so the woman who's pushing too, it's like, it's kind of funny, but it's also totally in character with what they would do. It's like, we're all in this together. So that's how I watched it, at least. So I understand. There is the hey, this movie is hilarious take that I've seen around, and I do believe like there's first of all because Will Poulter's fucking funny in this.
He is, yeah.
And then also I think there's such a distaste for the American way of approaching anything.
Oh yeah,
I think you look at it and you think, oh shit, they got us.
Yep.
Even though Ari Aster's American. Like just like that it's so incisive that people laugh in response, and I appreciate that too.
Yeah,
but there's been a few movies like that where there's two ways to watch it. One where there's an audience who thinks it's hilarious. The other one where it's like, oh my fucking god, and both are correct. And it sounds to me like this is the right movie for that.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like that was really the only situation where I found myself laughing out loud. Maybe a quick chuckle here or there, but that one really brought the house down.
Yeah.
And I like what you're saying about the group mentality and how that comes through in the way that they process emotions together. And I can see that being appealing in a way, like the scene where Pele, the friend who invites them there, sits down with Florence Pugh and explains to her, I know what you're going through. My parents died too. And I had this community, thank God. Lucky for me, everyone here raised me as their own, and I had this place, so I never felt alone. And I feel horrible that you feel alone, and I wanted to bring you here so you could feel this. And I could see the appeal to that. It makes sense from their perspective, from their ideology, much in the same way it makes sense in The Wicker Man when you have this outsider who's being a fucking asshole to everybody and just, trudging all through everything that's going on with such disrespect that, of course they're going to kill him at the end.
Right.
Like, of course they're going to kill these fucking asshole grad students who want to take photos and do their thesis on this community and disrespect it and piss on the ancestral tree. Yeah, like, they totally deserve it.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
I have to say, as an anthropology major, it was really interesting to watch the kind of denigration of anthropology, which is so problematic in so many ways. So yeah,
so
another interesting element of it.
So Western oriented, it's like, look at the fascinating way you primitive people do this.
Yes, you're so weird. Let's put it on display.
Yeah.
But also, who else but anthropology grad students would say, look, we have to see this out?
I know, that's so true. That is so true.
We got to stay here. We got to see everything. Yeah, we're not packing up and going home after those people launch themselves face first off that cliff.
Yeah.
No, we need to see everything now.
No, they've got an immediate thing. It's like, look, they probably think what we do is barbaric.
Yes.
Which is valid, but also, like, not that.
Right.
Yeah. Missing the point.
I do want the thing about the amount of time it takes to process an emotion. That's also what I felt in Hereditary, where the middle is so long when you watch it again, but the shock from seeing the daughter's head get smashed off in the car, that the audience needs to come down too. So the movie's paced in such a way that it thinks about your experience, not just the characters.
Which is a brilliant way of executing it and looking at it. It's so fascinating. Yeah.
Like you had this trauma too because you watched it.
Yep.
So let's breathe this out and then let's get to the horrific shit once we're all ready,
And that is so fascinating to look, because so often thinking about a film and thinking about a filmmaker's vision, it feels sometimes so singular to their story and to what they want to tell, to think of a film as a communal experience, because it is a communal experience, but to anticipate what the audience's reaction will be and how they need time to process too. I think that's a great point that you bring up. Yeah.
Cool. All right.
Yeah.
Yes. yes. Let's all hold hands and set fire to something. Brings us to the kitchen. I'm sorry to bring everybody down.
Womp womp.
Maybe we should have done that in the other order. Anyway,
I know. Oh, wow.
The kitchen is. I remember seeing the trailers, and now I'm not a trailer guy, but these are the trailers they stuck before screenings and everything.
Yeah.
I remember it's like, I don't really get it, but I'm gonna see it.
Right.
Because I'm curious.
It sounds good. It's got Melissa McCarthy. It's got
Elizabeth Moss,
Tiffany Haddish in the main roles. Yeah,
all three of them are great.
Yeah, 1970s New York. These
Yeah.
women's, starting their own crime syndicate. This
Taking charge.
Yeah. This
Sounds awesome.
Sounds awesome. Sign me up.
Woman directed it and wrote it. Yes. And yeah.
Yeah. And then it happens.
It sure does.
So this movie is what I've heard. People use this word, and I'm going to borrow it, inert. It's always in the same state. It's always no matter. It's not reacting to the energy of the story, to the characters. There's only one person that seems to really have a real arc, and that's Elizabeth Moss.
Yes.
And she's the one who's killed off the soonest.
Yes, and
of the main characters.
And I know we're gonna get into it, but yeah, I would argue it's a really fucked up arc. But yeah.
But that's the one that it's like, where's this going?
Yeah.
Look at the chemistry between these two. Look at this character.
Yeah.
And then it's like, is that all you used this for? What the fuck?
Yes.
That's the problem. It's like
Yes.
It's not just the character, which why not make this the whole movie? Like the two of them doing their thing, and then everybody else is secondary to them. Instead of having this conspiracy plot, instead of turning Tiffany Haddish into somebody who's like, why the fuck are you doing all this? And then at the end, she's like, well, it turns out I was in cahoots with the feds. And it's like, okay, but that you explained it, but you also kind of drained any intrigue that barely was there to begin with.
100%.
And then there's Melissa McCarthy, who is always good, I think, when she is not in the kind of role that made her famous.
Completely agree. I wish she would do more dramatic roles. She was brilliant in Can You Ever Forgive Me? I even think she's great in this.
Yeah, no, she's great in it.
Yeah.
It's kind of just one, like what I said in my review was anytime when you watch a movie and somebody says, I did what I had to do, usually it's because I'm in the process of thinking, it's like, why the fuck did they do that? And then later they said, I did what I had to do. And they're supposed to go, oh yeah, they did do what they had to do. But you didn't have to. I understand why you might have decided to.
Right.
But I don't think you had to. And this movie really should have dove more, like, you understand why the decision was made to fend for themselves. Mm-hmm. And then all the other stuff is like boilerplate gangster stuff that's not related to what the appeal of this movie should have been. Right.
Yeah. The film is very scattered and very, like, I felt like there were, talking about how it could have just focused on Elizabeth Moss and Domhnall Gleeson. I felt like this was such a, not even bifurcated, like it was just going off in multiple directions, and which you'd think, okay, it's complex, but it's not. It never delves into anything really deeply. And it ends up thinking like, well, why didn't we focus more over here? Why didn't we focus more over here? Oh, we could have focused on that. And it doesn't really delve deeply into any of those things, which is unfortunate. Yeah. I expected and wanted a much better film that did go deeper. And when you're talking about like someone saying I did what I had to do, right? Exactly. And the thing that always irritates me is when someone is when you hear a character tell another character something about their character and they say it multiple times. All I can think of is the complete opposite. Like Tiffany Haddish said multiple times to Melissa McCarthy, well, you're the smart one, you're smart. And I'm like, Melissa McCarthy in this movie is the worst judge of character ever. She can't realize anything that's happening. She doesn't. Everyone she thinks is good is shitty, and vice versa. So it just was irritating to me.
Yeah. So the short plot summary is that Tiffany Haddish, Melissa McCarthy, and Elizabeth Moss are married to James Badge Dale, Jeremy Bobb, and Brian Darcy James, and their husbands get caught robbing a store and get sent to prison for 3 months, or not 3 months, 3 years. And they're thinking, shit, what the fuck are we going to do? We don't have any money. And they're in Hell's Kitchen, and they're Irish people, basically, and they're, the people who are still left, the mobsters are still left, are not really going to take care of them. So they decide on their own, we're going to start up our own side business, we'll take over and we'll make money, and then we'll kind of rise to the top while our husbands are gone. And then hopefully when they come back, we'll just keep riding because we'll be so powerful they won't be able to tell us no. Does that seem like a good kind of overall synopsis of what we're setting up?
Sure. And then there's Power... sorry.
Oh, no, I was just going to say, and it's also based on Vertigo DC comic. So it's an adaptation of an 8-issue comic series. Mm-hmm. That's the only
Which
thing
I'm curious about, because
same.
things that I liked are things that I can see working in a graphic novel.
Right.
I just wish it was shot more dynamically than a graphic novel.
Well, I'm so glad you said that.
I should mention the cinematography here.
Yes.
Is gorgeous. It's a very accomplished cinematographer whose work you've seen before. Her name is Maurice Alberti, Academy Award nominated. Look at her credentials, and she's
phenomenal.
Phenomenal.
Yeah.
And so when I say shot, I mean like, I guess it's movement, it's editing, it's like the way you're told, the directing of it.
Yeah.
The things that a director does. Like the cinematographer says, like, cool, you want it to look that way, I made it look that way.
Yeah. But I'm so glad you brought it up, because when I found out she was the DP for this, I was so excited because I love her work. She's incredible. Her cinematography on Creed alone and the use of movement in that film is genius. So I was so excited. I was like, oh, I always feel like not enough action films have really dynamic, really beautiful cinematography. So I was so excited. And then I saw this, and I felt like I keep coming back to Kris, your usage of inert, and that's how this felt too. It felt like anytime there was like movement that was like, okay, this is going somewhere. This is moving in a dynamic way. It just it felt like it was stopped short and it was cut off at the knees, and I'm just like, what? Yeah. So it was really frustrating.
Yeah.
I felt like there was going to be insurmountable problems with the movie when they started the criminal operation. Like they find the gaps in these guys are paying you protection, but you're not holding up your end of the bargain. So they go into the store and say like, pay us and we'll do it. And then they just succeed. Like it's like step one, racketeering or whatever, protection. Step two, question mark. Step three, profit. Like they go to step three.
Right.
And suddenly it's like, oh, you guys are really good at this, and now you're really successful. Congratulations, 5 minutes later.
Well, yeah.
Well, because all the montages told us that they were successful.
Right. Yeah, and it's like, they recruit Melissa McCarthy, some of their cousins to, be the enforcers and do the protecting, but then they get in trouble with their boss for this side business.
But like it has to be harder than, hey, what's up? Pay us instead. Okay, bye.
Yeah.
That's what it was.
Totally. Yeah, and you very only occasionally see them rough somebody up. Can I just talk about how uncomfortable I was for the amount of time and effort and story they devoted to intimidating the Orthodox Jews in this movie? It just feels so weird and so wrong that there's a situation where, just slightly uptown is this group of, Orthodox, jewelers and whatever. They're building a building, and, Melissa McCarthy and her team want to bring in their labor people. And so they launch this campaign to intimidate them into joining their business instead of paying the mobsters and Italian mobsters in Brooklyn for protection. And they just go to these lengths. Like they take a garbage truck and dump raw meat or body parts like on their doorstep. Yeah. They shoot some guy and leave his corpse just on these stairs for people to. It just seems like an absurd amount of time to waste on what should feel like a meaningless plot point.
Yeah.
Agreed.
My as the Jew on this, Megan, are you Jewish?
I am not.
Okay. So speaking and Evan, I know you are by marriage, and you've been getting into some stuff more than I ever was in my life. So that's cool. So my problem was that they weren't characters.
Right.
Exactly. Yeah.
Like if you make a movie about organized crime in the 60s, 70s, 80s, you're not doing your job if there aren't the organized the diamonds and the Orthodox Jews and the buildings and stuff. That was a real part of it. Yeah. Just the way New York was like, this is ours, this is ours, this is ours, and usually it was by when somebody emigrated and there's a community. So there's a strong history of why different groups organized the way they did, and Orthodox Jews were one of them. And my problem is that they were just guys who were just there to say, we're your next obstacle.
Right.
Yeah.
And that it feels like so much attention was called to them more than any other. That's the issue I had with it. Like everybody's roughing each other up. Everybody's got their own interests. You're paying so and so. It's corrupt all over.
Right. And they're singled out as kind of like the wimpy guys that need to be intimidated when it's like
they're the biggest obstacle.
Right. Yeah. It's not like there aren't Jewish mobsters. There are. So like to make them be just kind of these wimpy guys, it's just, I don't know, it just feels stupid. And I felt that too. Bizarre that they spend so much time and energy on that plot when there's other areas, like you guys are saying, they could have explored more.
Cut them out, and it's the same movie too.
Yeah.
Right.
Which is problematic on any way you look at it.
Right. Yeah. Right. So yeah, what else? Like what looking back on movies that deal with diamonds in the 70s, and I see them going into Jewish neighborhoods and stuff, I'm never fazed by it because that's just fucking what you did. But then I watch this movie, and you're right. There's a dwelling here, and I wonder if in the comic it's more complicated. I bet. I'm interested.
Yeah.
In that.
I don't know. Yeah. And well, I think the interesting thing is that in interviews, Andrea Berloff has said that she did a ton of research on this, and she said that Domhnall Gleeson's character was based on an actual Vietnam vet who cut up bodies and threw them into the river.
He was a wonderful character, I thought.
Oh, okay. and she talked about that, the war between the Italian mafia and the Irish mafia, and for the building of the Javits or Javits, I never know how to pronounce it, center, and that was the building that they were building, so you guys are absolutely right about that there were Jewish mobsters, but at the same time, it's just so weird. Like, why not explore them as actual people? Like, why make them just one dimensional? Why have them be so throwaway if you're going to spend so much time on them? It just felt really weird.
Symptomatic of the issue that even the main characters aren't really people.
No, they're just caricatures.
Yeah.
None of them.
Except Elizabeth Moss and Domhnall Gleeson.
Oh, and I would disagree.
Oh, yeah?
Yes. Domhnall Gleeson, I think, made the most of a fairly one-dimensional role, and I would argue Elizabeth Moss did too. I have so many problems with her story and with her arc because talking about domestic violence in this way, where we see the very first opening shot of her, we see her face is bruised, her husband is intimidating her. Throughout the film, she's getting catcalled, she's getting harassed, she's getting beat up by an addict at a church, she's getting almost raped, and she's continuously getting berated by men throughout the film and getting beat up by men throughout the film. And it's interesting that we never see Tiffany Haddish or Melissa McCarthy getting harassed, getting catcalled, anything of the sort. It's just Elizabeth Moss. And, it's great. I always love when, men get their due in that kind of a situation. But it's so problematic that Domhnall Gleeson was the one who shoots her rapist. And then he's the one who teaches her how to shoot guns and cut up the bodies. And that's when she starts killing, is because of him. And then what bothered me too was that she can't, instead of leaving her husband and being alone or staying with friends or something like that, she just jumps from one relationship into another with Domhnall Gleeson, as if she's not her own person who can stand on her own 2 feet. So even when she's taking charge, and I'm using air quotes here, and, is shooting people and being aggressive and, empowered, arguably, it's still with the support of a man. And it just, the whole way the domestic violence is framed in the film is it really bothered me. There was something about it that just really bothered me. And I'm glad that it was talked about. Like, at least she had a conversation about it with the other women. But at the same time, like, there's a scene where Tiffany Haddish says to her, besides getting hit, what other skill set you got?
That came out of nowhere.
Right. And I'm like, what the fuck? And then we have a scene where Tiffany Haddish's mother, she's confronting her mother, and she's like, why did you beat me as a kid? Is that why you beat me as a kid? And then she's like, I wanted to beat the soft out of you, and I wanted you to have this. And she holds up a wad of cash. And I'm like, what the fuck is happening here? So it's it's almost like Andrea Berloff wanted to show the misogyny that women go through, like the sexual harassment, the sexual discrimination, and that's all great, and I'm on board for all of that. But then it's also showing these other awful, horrible things and not really empowering at all. And so it just was really, really frustrating. Elizabeth Moss is a great actor, and her arc could have been great, and it just frustrated me so much and just bothered me. So
I was ready for it to go somewhere more interesting than it went.
Yes.
That's the thing.
Yeah.
I was like, why is she the one
right
that gets killed?
Yeah.
And so suddenly, and then Domhnall Gleeson makes what was a boring scene into it's like, oh, there's an interesting moment in it when there's the confrontation at the end where he says, I loved her. Melissa McCarthy says, I loved her too. Then he realizes he's outgunned and he's just like, okay. And he walks away.
Yeah.
Like, he just needed to be heard.
Yeah.
That's a good moment, but that's not enough
Right.
to come out of where this all went.
Well,
Exactly.
especially because the conflict between the characters feels so nonsensical. Like, I think of other gangster movies, and I think of Goodfellas because this, how can you not? And you think of the different characters and their different modes of operation. You think of De Niro being so financially minded and brutal, and Pesci being super fucking brutal and just being like the muscle and the crazy guy. And you think of Ray Liotta as kind of like the in-between guy who's just kind of along for the ride. And you look at these characters and you're like, I don't really understand Elizabeth Moss's character. Okay, she's the one that's doing the shooting and the chopping up. I get that. But the other two, I just don't really get it. And I don't get their conflicts between each other. I don't get why Tiffany Haddish is making all these moves on the side and why she's got Common, who's this FBI guy that she's seduced and paid off in this really weird reveal that never goes anywhere.
No.
Like, why is this happening? Why is she so desperate to ditch Melissa McCarthy and put her down? And like, that just doesn't make sense to me at all.
No, it didn't make any sense. And that for a film that is framed and, promoted as like this female camaraderie, kind of working together, it all unravels and they're not working together at all. And they all have their own agenda and it never resolves itself. It never arguably they come back together as this uneasy truce, but not really.
Yeah.
So.
And even that doesn't make sense.
Right?
They just say, okay, well, I guess we'll work together. All right. The end.
Yeah.
End of movie. We're done.
Yeah.
And it also, to me, like, I love the idea of bringing race into this, like bringing an intersection of race and gender in Tiffany Haddish's struggles and, talking about, how she's discriminated against in a white neighborhood, because she's a black woman. And that's great. Not that she's discriminated against, but that the movie talks about that or addresses that issue. That's great. And it could have been wonderful, but I don't care what Tiffany Haddish is doing. I don't care what her plan is. Her plan doesn't make sense at all. And none of it makes sense. Like, just...
Yeah. So Common is the FBI agent who arrests the husbands at the beginning. And every once in a while, he's just like, here's what they're doing. And then he's like in a car outside Elizabeth Moss's funeral. And then then Tiffany Haddish is like, I have a meeting. And then he's there at a car, and then they make out. And Melissa McCarthy's like, "What?
Right?
Oh my God, you planned the whole thing." It's like, yeah, but Common has just been there.
Yeah,
it's just been Common's face,
right?
Just popped up,
just sitting at his desk.
Oh, and that's the other thing I was gonna say. I knew I was forgetting something. That was the other thing that irritated me too. Is that if Tiffany Haddish is this like criminal mastermind who's like orchestrated this whole thing? Okay, that's awesome. Arguably, that's or could have been awesome. But again, it feels like she needs to rely on a man. Like she's got to have Common back her up. Elizabeth Moss has to have Domhnall Gleeson back her up. Melissa McCarthy has to have her father and her cousins and all her family back her up. And it's like, so yes, the women are in charge. And I feel even bad saying that because there's so few women gangster films. And even if you look to women heist films or women crime films, there's really not enough and not very many. So it's great to see women taking charge and empower and power plays and all of that. But at the same time, it just still feels like they need men in order to have their power. And like there are moments like when Melissa McCarthy's daughter asks her like, "Mommy, you look so pretty." And she's like, "Oh, pretty's just a tool that women use to get whatever they want." And it's like, that could have been great, like to explore that more. But again, it's just like a quick line and then it's gone. So,
right. So like it starts... For me, it's a flaw that it doesn't establish what it's actually about. So going back to Goodfellas, one of the best things about Goodfellas was that it shows what the appeal is while also never being like, hey, this is awesome. So you're along the so that sets the tone. And I'm not saying that this has to have the same tone, but I'm saying you have to know. Like, so Ray Liotta's mom in Goodfellas season is like, what the fuck is that suit? And also like they're just hanging out this pizza kitchen. A guy comes buying a bloody thing. you're inside Ray Liotta's head, but you're also seeing it from the outside.
Right.
Like,
Yep.
this is not glamorous. You're just pretending like it's glamorous, and you're being a bunch of idiots.
Right.
Where this movie, it starts with the like, yeah, fuck yeah, go get them.
Right.
And then it has those issues. So it's never one thing or the other. If it were like this, like, you know, we have to strategize. We have to use what we have. You know, the world sees us this way. We have to maybe exploit that, play into it.
Yes.
The problem is that the movie starts with like, we're kicking ass. Look at us. And then it goes back to that thing.
Right.
Where it's, if you had a better sense from the beginning that there was a knowledge of what it was that they were exploiting in the loop, in oversights in the criminal operation, and low expectations of them, but also recognizing it's like, if we just rise too quickly, too visibly, we might get taken down just as fast. So there's flaws in society that we have to play into. I think if that seed were planted early, then the things that happen later would have some context.
Right. And it'd have a better payoff too. Yeah. I mean, that's the thing. Right. I mean, I think the thing about Goodfellas and the thing about any other, you know, crime film or gangster film, what makes it so interesting is the reasons why people are doing something, or the reason, you know, what are they doing this for? Why are they entering this life? Is it that they're addicted to violence, or that they're, you know, drawn to this lifestyle? Is it, you know, they need the money? Is it something, what is it, you know, is it the toxic masculinity? What is going on? And this film starts off with, well, we have to pay the bills and nobody's looking out for us. And, you know, and, you know, Melissa McCarthy has, like, you know, where she says, you know, we had babies and we got married, we don't have degrees. So what are we going to do? And that's all valid. And I'm like on board, and I'm like, okay, this is great. But yeah, but it just, and you know, you can talk about absolute power corrupts absolutely, but I would have actually liked to have seen that explored. Like, everything seems to be happening off screen. Like, Elizabeth Moss having a thirst for violence seems to be happening off screen, even though we're seeing, you know, her shoot people or threaten people with guns, and Tiffany Haddish's, you know, need for power seems to be happening off screen. Like, I just wanted more reasons and more character development and more depth.
Elizabeth Moss, I think, is the only one that you see her personality trait, like the moment it's unlocked in her. And then you see her make a decision, like, this is the guy. In the car, like when they make eye contact, I was like, this is a fucking great moment.
Yeah.
Cinematically. Yeah. And yeah, we just got to do it to pay the bills. That's it. And then they're paying the bills, and it's like, we're so powerful. We have all this power. And then it just flies in 100 different directions very quickly.
Yeah. Yeah. And it also, their rise to power seemed to happen, like, I think, Evan, you said, like, in 5 minutes. And it does. And literally, I think I lost count of the montages. There's too many montages in this. And like, so I never felt like there was an actual, like, gravity to this, or any kind of like stakes or anything, because it all just, like, whoop, flies by. And yeah. So.
I like the Brooklyn guys.
The Italian,
the Italian
guys, Bill Camp and his crew.
Oh, Bill Camp is always great.
Yeah,
he's always great.
I mean, he is entertaining. I mean, it's not great, that scene where he's like, "Oh, sweetie, I'm smarter than you."
No, that was gross.
Well, that's what I mean by it's great.
Yeah.
As in it's well employed.
Yes. And speaking of, I also always love seeing Annabella Sciorra. That was a nice little cameo from her, or maybe a little more than a cameo, but still nice to see her, since she's been a mob wife in other films.
That there was solidarity that wasn't ethnic or regional.
Yeah.
You know, that was
cool. That was great. I loved that she was supportive of the women taking charge, and that was great. And I kind of wanted, there are some great moments in the film, and I just wanted more of a, you know, of a thread throughout the film of that.
I think it should have either been like a power fantasy, or like a hard-nosed look at what it takes to get ahead.
Right.
It's both and it's neither.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. I always love an exploration of power dynamics, and it's just not enough of that.
Yeah. A thoughtful look at the problems of trying to do what they're trying to do.
Right.
Or that they're so good they just keep succeeding and they just like, fuck you, I'm going to shoot you too.
Right. And that they just can't stop or feel like they can't stop because they're in too deep, or they're just getting too much into this lifestyle. And, once you start being violent once, it's like, well, why not just keep getting violent? So yeah, I would have loved to see more of that. But it's so interesting too with Andrea Burloff, because I know, Kris, you and I were kind of talking about this off radio, not radio. I was gonna say off camera, but off the mic. That's what I want to say. I was like, I couldn't think of the word. But we were talking about how Andrea Burloff has done a lot of co-writing and done a lot of really interesting scripts, and she co-wrote Straight Outta Compton, and her pitch for Straight Outta Compton, the reason she got the job was because she said, this is not just a biopic about a band. This is about police brutality. This is about racism, and I want to explore these big issues and make this a big film. And that's great. And that was so interesting. And so I feel like for this, because she has said in interviews that she was really drawn to the comics because the comics were sent to her by New Line, and she read them and she loved it because she was born in Framingham, but she lived in Hell's Kitchen for a little while, or maybe a long while, but she lived in Hell's Kitchen and she loved Hell's Kitchen. So she felt an affinity to it, and she wanted to tell the story of women, and that's all great. And she definitely has big issues here, like, domestic violence and sexual harassment and, sexism in the workplace and class issues and all of these big issues. There's just, I don't know. I don't want to say there's too many ideas, but it's just not enough focus.
Does it feel a little bit like the kitchen sink?
It might.
Goddamn. Of course.
But
Two my last two stray thoughts that tie into what I was saying. Tiffany Haddish is a wonderful performer.
Yes.
You can tell that her character is so thinly written, so thinly sketched, because the performance is really only scene to scene. There's not a change in her.
No,
it's the exact same thing the whole time. So that means that there's not, like, she just gives these great line readings and then they just sit there. So like when she says, what are you good at except getting beaten? It just hangs in the air because there's no character force behind it. There's a very good performer behind it, but the character doesn't exist.
Right. And we're told that she's soft by her mother, and I don't see a softness. I don't see anything.
We're told a lot about Tiffany Haddish.
Yes.
She says some things. It's like,
right.
Okay, I hear you, but we don't see how any of it matters.
Right. Exactly.
That's not her fault. I'm sure that's not her fault.
Not her fault. I agree.
And then the second thing was the scene where Domhnall Gleeson shows up, where so the guy that he shoots is the guy who's assaulting her. And he's the guy who's also refusing to pay them enough to live, the guy whose criminal operation they're replacing.
Yeah.
It's so weirdly done that I didn't know. It's like, that kind of looks like that other guy. And it's like, that's weird that guy looks like that other guy. I didn't know that it was him for sure until they said it like
until they
later.
Said Jimmy. Right, exactly.
Little Jackie was this character's name.
Like, that's weird.
I thought it was Jimmy.
Yeah,
oh my God, I don't even know
Jackie.
his name.
Jimmy Jack. That's weird, right?
I thought
Did you have the same impression?
I had the exact same thing. I'm like, is that him? It looks like him, but maybe not. Is it just some rando by the trash? Yeah. Until they said his name, I was not 100% sure. I was very confused.
It's like he's wearing the same shirt as that guy. He's got the same haircut, but maybe he wasn't available to shoot that day. But you still should have done something.
Yeah.
Because it felt like this all happened really fast, and then suddenly he's dead. Like, oh, well, now that he's dead, let's do all this stuff. Like, what the fuck? Why'd you do it this way? So those are the last two things I wanted to say about it. I was curious and I was ready to like it, and I didn't.
Yeah. I feel really badly that I don't like it because, and I sometimes I try not to say that a lot, but I feel like it because this is a first-time woman director. She wrote the script. There's not, like I said earlier, there's not a lot of women gangster films and women crime films. I mean, there are some, of course, but just not enough. And these are great, performance, or these are great actresses. And not only that, something else as a side note that is kind of weirdly interesting to me. The Wrap reported that The Kitchen has the smallest screen release of any Melissa McCarthy film, which I thought was kind of sad.
Yeah, it is sad.
It's also surprising because I feel like I
surprising.
see ads for it a lot.
Yeah, right. I've seen tons of ads everywhere, but I think that's really strange that this is getting the smallest opening of any of her films. And it's unfortunate. And so, I wish I could have said I loved it or at least liked it enthusiastically.
I don't dislike it so much that I don't want her to ever direct another movie.
Oh, God, no.
I'd love to see what else she can do,
Yes.
especially because she's such a good writer.
Yes.
But I do want to see a different movie from her.
Yeah.
There you go. Okay. Okay, so The Kitchen, a begrudging don't see from us. Or maybe see it.
Maybe
Support.
see- Yeah, I would say see it to support it.
Yeah. But then
But have low expectations.
have low expectations. Midsommar is still a C.
Yes.
I'm glad you can still see it. Where'd you see it, Evan?
Somerville,
Somerville?
of course.
Cool. They're still playing it.
Yeah.
Wow,
Fuck
that's
yeah.
amazing.
They're down to 2 showings a day, but they're still playing it.
All right.
Still great.
Then The Perfection and Them That Follow. I want to see both of them.
Yeah, The Perfection definitely see. I would still say see Them That Follow. It's a slow film, but I think it's interesting. Even though I wasn't enamored with it, I liked it. There's some interesting ideas happening. I would still say see it.
Okay.
Especially for the snakes.
Snakes. I love snakes. Thank you for listening to another episode of Spoiler the Piece Theater. You can find us at spoilerthepiece.com. Spoilerthepiece.libsyn.com is our hosting site. You can find us on Facebook, Spoiler the Piece Theater, Twitter, at Spoiler the Piece, also Instagram. You can find us anywhere podcasts are found, Google Play, iTunes, etc. And you can leave us a rating at any of those.
Please do.
Please do.
It helps other people find the show.
Yeah. If you like it, tell a friend. If you hate it, tell an enemy.
Yep. Either way, we're good.
Yeah.
Either way, tell people.
Just tell people. You can send us an email, spoilerthepiece@gmail.com, and you can also give us a call,
At 862-21-PEACE.
and you can leave a voicemail for us there. And if you like the show, you can check out patreon.com/spoilerpiece. That is our Patreon page. Not for another spoiler piece on Patreon. And this week we've got some exclusive audio about some movies that Evans caught up, movins that Evie has caught up with. Is what I almost said.
Oh, Evie.
Yeah. And I promise never to call you that again. We've also got a poll up there where we are looking at significantly worse sequels to terrific or famously good movies. Famously bad sequels to famously great movies.
Yes.
So that's an interesting trend for me.
Yeah, so sign up for Patreon. You'll get exclusive audio. You'll get to vote on our latest poll. And then you get to pick the movie that we watch and talk about. And it's just for your ears only.
Just for yours and the other patrons. Thank you for listening again. My name is Kris Jensen. I'm a contributing writer at Seville Weekly, and I'm a member of BOFCA. You can find me on Twitter at @Stuparite. You can find me on Letterboxd KJensen. That's KJENSON.
My name is Evan Crean. I'm editor for The Independent, co-chair of BOFCA, and co-author of your 80s movie guide to better living. And you can follow me on Twitter and on Letterboxd as Real Recon.
And I'm Megan Kearns. Thanks so much, guys, for having me as a guest again. I'm a freelance writer, member of BOFCA, and you can find me on Twitter at OpinionSWorld.
Awesome. Thanks for listening.
Yeah, thanks for coming on.
And thanks for
Thank
coming
you.
on, Megan.
Thanks so much. It was great. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.